I know guys, it's a super common questions and so many influencers have been giving you different answers for that question. So I want to give you a couple of tips about carbon versus alloy bike. Okay, the most common question about carbon versus alloy I get is, Dan, should I buy carbon bike on the lower group set, lower components, or an alloy bike on the higher group set or a higher components? Here are my tips, which will be, I'm 100% sure, very, very helpful for you. Number one tip, guys, the thicker the tires of the bike are, the less difference you're gonna feel between carbon compliance and alloy roughness, right? Because we know carbon bikes are a bit more compliant. We are not talking about suspension here, we're talking about muting the road bus, okay? The carbon will mute that road bus. So if you're riding, let's say, tarmac, but it's not good quality tarmac, or it's like tarmac made of bigger rocks, like in Iceland, when I'm riding there, the tarmac is made so that it won't be slippery when it's icy or with a little bit of snow. You're gonna feel, that's the best way to feel that the carbon bike is a bit more compliant than the alloy bike. But since we have cyclocross bikes here, and these tires are 33C tires, look like this. And if you put tubeless system here, so no inner tubes, that means less pressure. It will be super difficult or impossible for you to do a blind test and know whether you're riding carbon bike or an alloy bike. So that's tip number one. The thicker the tires, the less difference you're gonna see in the comfort, in the compliance. Of course, the carbon bike will be lighter. That might be roughly 500 grams between carbon frame set, alloy frame set, maybe with a carbon bladed fork, alloy steerer. So the weight is there, but the weight is important only for those who are racing and those who are racing on the higher level. So that's tip number one. Number two, mountain bikes. Mountain bikes, especially with the suspension, just the front or full suspension and super thick tires comparing to these, you're not gonna feel that your carbon bike is more compliant, but you're gonna feel how compliant your seat post is. And also, the more your seat post stands out from the frame. So if the frame was a little bit shorter here, the seat tube will be shorter, you will feel even more difference in the compliance between the carbon seat post and the alloy seat post. Great example, guys, Canada bikes with 27.2 millimeters of the diameter on the mountain bikes and 25.4 on the road bikes. Even alloy seat post flexes, but if you have the carbon one, then it's very compliant. So buying an alloy bike on the higher components, maybe having better wheels, which will be stiffer, more responsive, and having carbon seat post, nicely done for compliance, then the difference is really super little. You're gonna feel it on the road bike, thin tires and high pressure. On a cyclocross bike, lower pressure. Gravel bikes, in a even lower pressure. Mountain bikes, even lower pressure. Really, there is not that much difference. One thing, just for the carbon frame sets, these are no longer like one-season bikes. It was in the past when they were still exploring the options with the carbon fibers and how to do those. Now the technology gives us really robust frame, a rough one, super rough even. So we cannot say that also alloy will be superior to carbon when it comes to how robust and how solid it is. No, carbon frames can be super good. Like this frame is super good, but it's a trait. So finally, which one to buy? Carbon on the lower group set, alloy on the higher group set. And my last tip is, if you are very racing oriented, buy a carbon one, because you will be upgrading it. Maybe you will be damaging your wheels and then you have to replace those. Buy a carbon one. If you are just overall rider, I mean everything, cyclocross, commuting, gravel bikes, trail bikes, cross-country bikes, buy alloy bike if you just want to train on it, maybe even ride a lot, do some trips and sometimes races. Buy an alloy bike and buy it just as cheap as possible, as long as it's still good quality, right? You don't buy, in my opinion, $350 bike and do whatever on it. But if you're not racing oriented, alloy. So that's pretty simple, right? Carbon will be expensive. This is for half pros and pros, or we also have like very advanced amateurs. Alloy is still very good. Like Cannondale Cat 12, for example, the frame set. The frame weighs 1135 grams or so, which is super light, and it will be lighter than many carbon frames that you will think, oh, it's a carbon frame and it's even cheaper than alloy and it's on Ultegra. It's not that good high quality. All right. So remember, the thicker the tires of your bike, the less you will feel difference in terms of the compliance. Remember that carbon bike will usually have about 500 grams, should have, usually. Yeah, Cannondale Cat 12, it will be a different topic, but usually just about 500 grams lighter carbon frame set than the alloy frame set. But the weight is not that important if you are not counting those seconds, those watts. So that's it, guys. Both bikes can be very good, but alloy is so versatile. I really recommend you guys, if you buy your first bike, your second bike, if you're getting more advanced, think about having alloy bike with nice wheels, carbon seat post which will be compliant, do tubeless system. I would now do tubeless system on pretty much everything, and that's my short answer about carbon versus alloy.